When at 14, I started to be sexualized by certain elements of the media. I think it is right that I should be able to make decisions about my own body. The more I have realized that fighting for women's rights has too often become synonymous with man-hating. If there is one thing I know for certain, it is that this has to stop.
It's in the reach of their arms, the span of their hips, the stride of their steps, the curls of their lips. They are phenomenal women, and they deserve greater rights than forbidden privileges for rendering this world charm and glamour.
What happened to me and what happens to me is the most real of all, she says.
Millions of women in this world have become victims to rape or attempted rape. The repercussions of such brutal statistics are viciously substantial. The ones who vocalize in defense of the accused are bringing in theories to paint a picture that tells the way women dress dictates the existence of their implied consent for a man to come in and engage in sexual intercourse. Now, in this particular case, I do believe in the fact that express consent should not be a defense from the end of the defendant. I do accept the fact that it is a particular defense that is used in criminal and tort cases, but when it comes to rape, where one's body's integrity is challenged, or rather one's life is threatened, I believe the only consent that should exist as a defense is express consent, so therefore vocalized consent. The 1953 British case of Nash vs. Sheen can be taken into scrutiny. The legal ratio of this consent-based tort case is a prime weapon to establish a new trend that disregards implied consent as a defense in rape cases. In this case, the plaintiff went to the defendant hairdresser and requested for a haircut. Instead of a haircut, the defendant gave the plaintiff an unwanted, unconsented torn rinse and a hair dye, which caused rashes on the scalp of the plaintiff later on. The plaintiff sued the hairdresser under the grounds of battery and succeeded. The defense of the hairdresser of implied consent failed, as the court unanimously agreed that the defendant's actions constitute battery. I believe this particular case and the legal ratio behind the decision of this particular case is very much doctor-ordered to the context of this video. Why? Because when we look back at this particular case and see what actually happened, the plaintiff had to go through such predicaments because the particular defendant presumed what the plaintiff was actually intending impliedly or silently. Now, if this particular thing was legitimate through a particular legal system, it would be absolutely ridiculous, because imagine when a high authority can actually presume what you are thinking and do it to yourself, or rather grant it to yourself without actually asking from you. That will be absolutely predicamental. Why? Because the liberty of you and from a country's level, the liberty of a civilization will be outpowered by a high authority just because they have the power to presume what you are intending impliedly. Now, substituting, or rather including this particular theory to the case that we have right here, rape cases, in which we know rape cases mostly happen when the rapist thinks the woman is seductive, or rather seducing. And now the main factor behind seducing is the way you dress. Now, if a rapist has the power to actually decide, or rather presume, what the woman was thinking when she dressed up like that, and do anything that he wants to do to that particular woman, and when that particular thing is legitimate, that would be absolutely ridiculous, and that will be absolutely disastrous. Now, that detrimental thing will be legitimate if implied consent was legal in rape cases. If that was actually a thing in rape cases, that will be a possibility. It could develop into a particular situation, a circumstance where such rape cases will come out in a particular way that the defendant will be free from all the charges. As much as absurd it is when you don't have a right to get what you need to be done to your hair, it will be prejudicial when a woman doesn't have the right to wear what she wants just because men are presuming things. Now, I foresee a future predicament that the women might have to go through if things doesn't change. Now, in a country where a common law system is used, like in the UK, now for information, a common law system is a legal system where a country's law is developed through old case laws. They use old case laws to use in future cases. Now, in such a situation, inside such a system, I'm afraid if a couple of cases comes out in a way that those cases has used implied consent as a perfectly legal defense, I'm afraid that will lead to a potential future where sexual assault will be something normal whenever a woman dresses something seducing, or whenever a woman actually lays down on a beach naked. Now, in a world where we're trying to reduce the numbers of rapes and sexual assaults, in which the numbers are very high right now, this will eventually act as a huge hurdle against our cause. In the meantime, we talk about public rape. We should also be conscious about certain sexual assaults that happen between spouses when one partner goes beyond the limitations set out by the expressly stated consent of the other. Now, this situation is much more complex than the initial situation. Why? Because there's a social norm in which the society believes that when a couple gets together, they should be okay with anything between each other. So they presume that the couple got together because they were okay with anything between each other. Now, because of this particular reason, there's a likelihood of court allowing implied consent defense to be valid inside such a criminal case. Why? Because the court also do give attention to that particular social norm. But I think otherwise. I think still we should stand with the victim. Why? When we talk this thing from the end of the defendant, I believe sexual intercourse is not an absolute necessity like drinking water, eating food, and breathing in oxygen. I know it is a necessity, but lack of that would not kill you. But let me tell you something that will kill you: rape. So that's why we should stand with the victim of a particular rape. The ones who bring in arguments for the accused paints a picture. They say nudity of a woman's body naturally secretes hormones in a man and gives him sexual desires that he didn't even foresee coming. Now, this nature's theory argument is so common among those anti-hero boys who tries to justify those rapists just by quoting from their grade 11 textbook, which was about Charles Darwin. Well, let me tell you something. We are humans but not apes anymore, because we are able and we can and we have the ability to control our emotions and feelings. Now, let me take a situation. When you're hungry and when you walk into a supermarket, are you just going to grab items and just eat them just because you're hungry? Is that your justification? No, you're going to follow the rules. Why can't you do the same when you see a woman who is seducing? You must be able to control your sexual feelings as well. Getting the feelings is completely natural, but controlling them is a gentleman's job, and I believe you are a gentleman. One question remains. Would you justify implied consent if your beloved mother, sister, or your lover had to go through equal detrimental predicaments? A problem wouldn't be significant until it happens to us. So be wise, be compassionate, love your women, and be a shield that protects her from the world that turns against her head.
We've been silent for too long, and make no mistake about this. There's a high price to be paid for accepting your own invisibility. There is a diminishing of soul and spirit when the pictures you see and the definitions you hear never reflect your specific womanness.